Okay, so this video is about, I guess, a little bit more on the spiritual side. Um, Basically, just about how spirituality isn't really just about a belief in something. It's experience. I mean, for some people, has different levels. Culturally, some people believe it first and experience it later. But there are times where ex- is, religion is a direct experience, and then you create a belief system afterwards. So, in other words, religion is experiential as it is a belief system. The system is built around the experience. We interpret our reality, the way we experience reality. Religion is no different. There are different forms of interpretation, and I don't want to talk about that as much as the nature of religion as something direct. It is it is an action. Religion should be a verb, or spirituality should be a verb as well, because it is an act of dynamic openness in which the self becomes open to other, to something other. And it's not always mystical and vague. Sometimes we experience it as a god or a deity or a spirit. And sometimes, you might be able to argue that our way of experiencing it is molded by our beliefs. Um, and this is true, thinkers have said this before, that we interpret spirituality and our spiritual experiences are contingent upon our own culture and belief system. So, one of us will see Buddha, and another will see Jesus, and yet another will see Hindu deities. We interpret according to our religion or our culture, yeah, but the experience as a whole, and interestingly, and this is the more integral underlying thing that all religions share, the more contemplative and mystical sages and mystics who have experienced something, it's it's not contingent upon their culture and belief systems. I mean, to some vague extent it is, but for the mystics and the sages, it's something universal, and it hits every religion. Every religion in the world has been able to have mystics. Um, Teresa of Avila, I don't know, something like that, and numerous Zen Buddhist monks, or really any kind of any kind of mystic or sage in any religion. I think mostly of Eastern religions, only because I have studied them pretty extensively. But in the West, they've said the same thing. To compare one right now, Rumi. If you read some of Rumi's work, and you read the work of a mystic in Buddhism, and if you read a mystic in Christianity, like Teresa, they all sound very similar. They almost sound like, I don't know. Well, at least Rumi and Teresa of Avila sound almost like they're enchanted and part of this love, of this greater beingness. And the descriptions in which they give are very similar. And some of these underlying themes are just basically an openness, almost like a compassionate love for this, for love. I mean, the greater experience is this all-encompassing love and unity that melts away all forms and all images and all identity, to the point where they are part of this, and they're sort of remembering this greater spirit, or this greater mind that they are a part of, greater essence. And they realize that everybody is already part of this, and it's just like waking up to it, recognizing it, and different ways that they explain it, but they're all so similar. It raises the question: what is this underlying meaning? Is this true? Because every culture and every religion seems to share this mystical transmission or message. What does this mean as human beings? Well, it definitely means that there's some kind of universal aspect to contemplative traditions and religion, but it also means well, that there's a higher form of religious experience, and that sort of brings all traditions together. You can call it like the core theme that every contemplative and mystical tradition has been able to give their respective cultures. And this is sort of the bonding theme. This is the integral spirituality, the underlying message that they all share, that we are one with this cosmic consciousness or God or love, and literally our egos melt away in the direct experience of this Godhead. And that petty differences are truly petty, and religious traditions are not as important per se. Not that they downplay them exactly, like um, not that they aggressively attack their respective religions. They're actually more understanding that it was sort of needed for people. Um, but it's just very interesting. It's these underlying connections between all the religious traditions, and if you study it long enough, I mean, you really get a sense that there is some kind of greater meaning in things, and if you have the experiences directly, then all the better. And then the arguments that these things don't have any rational empirical evidence, that their brain misfires make little to no sense whatsoever. All of a sudden, the burden of proof is now on the people who dismiss this so easily as metaphysical gibberish. Because, to be honest, there's nothing less metaphysical than Zen and Buddhism and the mystical traditions. So I would say, if you must defend religion for some reason, because I think there's plenty of reasons why it exists, but one of the main defenses and main reasons why religious experience is not just belief, is because of this direct mystical experience people have. And that is the thing that makes it transformative. It makes the traditions actually valuable, because they say we're all one with God, and you can become one with God. You already are. And here's how I found out. Now you try. And especially in Buddhism, this very scientific, this inner science, this spiritual science, is the way that they've been able to handle showing people. And people verify, or they deny and try in other ways, and there are various methods. And these methods don't necessarily fight amongst each other as aggressively as Christianity has. Christianity itself has had these mystical traditions, but overall it seems that in the West there has been much less focus of these mystical traditions and more focus on their differences. And it's interesting. It doesn't necessarily mean that Western society is not as evolved. It's just taken a different direction. But I think it's going to need to reintroduce these transformative practices, because, and this is from the book Sociable God. Religion has two main things: transformative practice and translative practice. Can you translate and interpret the world in the time period you're in effectively, so the culture believes you? That's translative. When traditions no longer do that, they often wither away. Buddhism withered away in the East, in China. Not as much in China, but more so in India. It withered away when it couldn't answer this anymore, translate enough. Even though it was a transformative practice, it was able to evolve people, and it successfully evolved and transform their consciousness to appreciate or become more loving, more caring, more understanding of this universal truth. But the more translative aspects of it failed to meet up to expectations of the time period. But in the West, Catholicism experienced the same sort of thing. It failed to translate contemporary culture. Protestantism emerged, and etc. I guess. So you have this transformative and translative aspect to religion, and the transformative aspect, interestingly enough, has been the dissolution of ego, the dissolving of ego into love, into self, into mind, into God. While the lower aspects are all different. The translative aspects, are contingent upon their culture, their belief systems, their ideologies, their history, their resources, everything. All those variables are mostly with those relative aspects of culture, but all the transformative aspects are universal. So that's just something to think about. Okay.